do I have?
Yeah, keep going.
Till midnight? Okay. Checkpoint. This is the poem I like. I usually don't like my poems, but this is the one I like. At the checkpoint made of tree trunks and barrels filled with sand, a group of pale bus riders standing in a meandering line depends on one man whose belly will soon have his blouse buttons burst. Am I a Jew? A Muslim? A Catholic? Which one does he want to hate more today? Will my name on the soiled piece of paper confuse him or make him pull me out by my shred sleeve as if I were a disposable part of the human race, deemed perhaps to be worthy of living or dying, as my uncle used to say, by the look of my penis? Am I saved or doomed if he suddenly remembers, or I do, that we went to the same high school? As I try to keep my sternomastoids from twitching, my mind from being forced to accept that someone who has no power over life is a bigger coward than someone who does, he positions himself before me, his sourish breath becoming my breath. Do you know if Maria is still there? His words burn on my face like amber. There, meaning in the city. And I feel cold sweat run down my spine. Am I done for if I say yes, or if I say no? Pretend I did or did not recognize him? But he just grins and hands me back my papers, moving to a young woman next to me and motioning with his hand for her to step out, still glancing at me. While I rock back and forth, staring past him, past my life at the jagged line of skeleton trees on the mountain ridge where the dying daylight still lingers. Okay, some more of those gruesome in the classroom. The night slowly oh, yes. I'm reading it correctly. The night slowly chokes the light around us, and she closes the book, her hand hovering about the cover. History primer, a short guide. We look at each other as if trying to remember each other's face before it becomes its own shadow. The building's roof's charred skeleton, the classroom floor littered with textbooks, notebooks, the village half burned, deserted, except for one donkey braying in the field, as the two of us came down the road, two animals approaching warily from the opposite direction, trying to sniff each other out. She placed 2 grenades on the desk that now looked to me like overgrown exotic pears we are going to feast on. History is supposed to teach us something, but it never does, she almost yells. I look at the blackboard and make out the message. We will be back. A nauseous thought swells suddenly in my stomach. I was here before. She was here before. Closed the same book when I said, it does not because we never learned anything from it. Or did I utter that? Did I before? Or after she reached into her coat pocket and I shot her blindly to blot out all memory? You fainted, she exclaims, propping my head up. Her face coming and going together with a wavering candle that makes the walls ebb away, and school desks flung in the corner advance like a ghost towards us. It's from hunger, I whisper. Ah, this is a nice one. The conduct of war. From an old dank cardboard box in the cellar, I dumped out a whole forgotten battalion of tin soldiers I used to play with as a kid. How it got there and when, I couldn't remember. Perhaps I outgrew wars, and Mother believed people when they proclaimed this war ended all wars. It would have seemed so as I gazed silently at my troops' once colorful uniforms, now just faded patches, telling me they'd fought in all decisive battles. Their drawn swords twisted or broken, many a base they stood on gone, making them look as good as dead. Some without a hand or a leg I put carefully back into the box, together with 2 wooden horses, their head dangling on a shiny wire. What I really needed now was a few tanks, if nothing else some heavy artillery pieces, for I knew the advanced armored units had already reached the suburb, intent on crossing the river behind my building and linking up with the encamped mercenaries. My army was the only thing that stood in their way, yet no plan would I have been able to devise that would save us from being overrun. The following night, when the steady rumble of tracks and engines began to drown out the croaking of frogs at the riverbank, I painted with a crayon I found on the floor a Red Cross sign on the box and put it in the drum of a discarded washing machine. I took those battle-ready soldiers to the lobby and set them down on the highest step, all of us in a combat line facing the front door. Later, through half-closed eyes in the dark, I saw a 10-year-old kid I grew up with burst in, brandishing a wooden sword, a paper-cocked hat on his head, and we fought again. I, a 12-year-old veteran, swinging my mother broomsticks, until we both fell exhausted and said, "Truce?" Oh, this is a fun poem, a comic poem. Okay, 5 minutes. You can tolerate it. Comic relief, it has a little like epigraph, which is a copy thing changed. Comic relief. Comic episodes during war exist to lessen the tension and should be an essential part of the tragedy. That remembering Bugs Bunny frying a photo of a fish looked tastier than Chaplin cooking a shoe. Something grandmother had told me she had done during World War II, as did my mother with the belt after the war. That getting a humanitarian aid can of mackerel with a label in Arabic was as puzzling as an expiration date. That going through a bombed-out apartment in search of food could be like being at a marketplace on Friday. That with so little food came such a great need to go to the bathroom to relieve nature of nothing natural. That finding 2 boxes of Stay Free in the kitchen cabinet of a 70-year-old dead woman was a revelation. That those pads exchanged for a potato and 2 stacks of crackers proved nothing already useless was beyond usable. That trading a candle for a stand-up sex in the old Austro-Hungarian armoire would make the mind forget about the stomach. That sitting at the naked table in a motel when everything was over would have me vomit air at the very sight of food. Okay, 2 more, and that's it. Enough is enough. This is going to be the same. Oh, here's Nina Kastanian's. This is what I was referring to. The Romanian poem Nina Kastanian about, has cited this as a particularly American practice. She gives a hilarious parody of such a poet announcing his poem. There was a pear tree on my grandfather's farm, and one day I noticed that when its blossoms fell, they looked like dandruff falling on my grandfather's shoulders. So I wrote a poem about that. And it goes like this. On my grandfather's farm there used to be... It's like getting money twice for the same thing. Okay. This poem comes close to
I'm sorry.
Thank you. No, don't apologize. Whenever you come, you're welcome. Come to something, close to what happened. And it's entitled Of Belonging. A man in the middle of the road, his white shirt drenched by rain, the pants splashed by swerving cars, waves his arms in slow motion, as if trying to downshift, even arrest all motion. I pull onto the shoulder and get out, focusing on something at his feet. My mind cluttered with images that should have been removed long ago. A contorted body hit by a sniper. A dog shot for fun. There's no house around and I do not see his car, yet I run across, ducking my head instinctively, and make out a dog, one eye open as though waiting for the command to stop playing dead. Do you need help? My words are drowned by a siren, our presence dwarfed by two descending silhouettes. Get back in your car! One yells. I do not move. Get off the road now! The other bellows. The man doesn't move. I'm grabbed and I resist. The man is grabbed and he resists. The cold black leather of the patrol car's back seat smells the same as the one I was on. One eye gazing at a void like that dog's, my palm pressed against the ribs to block the bleeding from a shrapnel wound. Was I dragged from the pavement? Or did I drag someone from the pavement? Whose drops of blood spattered on the cement like a lazy summer shower? The raindrops at the headlights become white fluttering moths, and the man from the open road sitting next to me turns his head and smiles. Is that your dog? I hear myself ask. Isn't that now your dog too? I hear him say. And now kind of a Beckettian poem. You like Beckett? I do too. But I like Camus more. Homeward bound. I remember tomorrow. That was all I said when I set out on the way home. Though, by the way, if there was a way by, tomorrow must have already happened. Or I would not have remembered it. Which meant even if I had arrived where I was supposed to arrive, back home was there no more. For I would have made it only to yesterday. And wouldn't that have been the very day when I said, I remember tomorrow? Still, I followed the rusty railroad tracks, thinking they would have to get me somewhere. Although they were overgrown with weed, only here and there a meager-looking flower I hopped over or walked around, often losing my step, until I came to a gate, a spiderweb iron gate with a lock shaped like a heart on a chain around someone's neck. But there was neither a fence nor a wall at the either side of it, except two tracks running and going on and fading into a breathing, shimmering haze. I stood there to see whether another day, the one before or the next, was on the other side of the gate. But then a child appeared, as if he stepped through a curtain, jumping unsteadily from one invisible sleeper onto the other, from time to time flapping his arms to maintain the balance. And he came to me, his cheeks all puffed up, took a key out of his mouth and unlocked the gate. I could have gone around, I uttered, but the child smiled and said, walls and fences are not absent because we do not see them. But you remember tomorrow, so you can pass and go home with me. He turned around and jumped on the first patch of scarred dirt, and I followed, the sleepers, getting farther apart, our leaps ever more daring. And I waved my arms, and he flapped his, as if we were going to leave the earth and fly up. Still, two playful kids on their way home, not to be caught out too late, overtaken by darkness. Thank you.